It's indeed a pleasure to be talking right here with Mr. Naveen Jindal, the man of steel, energy and power right here. Thanks very much for speaking to us. Your results seem to be suggesting a turnaround story that's underway, and I think I will only begin with a positive note and talk to you about that. Is it too premature to say that the worst is behind you, you're officially out of the woods, steel prices are a big tailwind? Do you expect that to continue? Your QIP was initially 900 crore rupees, you raised it due to a good response. Is the turnaround story panning out as you had envisaged?
Thank you, Supriya. You're very right that in steel there is a lot of demand, and we feel that we have commissioned our plant, especially at Angul in Odisha, at the right time. We have come in at the right time when the demand is good, and all these problems that JSPL, you know that the JSPL used to be the most efficient company, the most profitable steel company in the world for its scale of operations. So we had planned all our projects based on indigenous coal and the coal blocks that we had got, and we had developed some of them as coal mines also, especially in Chhattisgarh. And then in Angul in Odisha, where we had been allocated a coal block, we had planned a project to set up a large steel plant based on Swadeshi raw materials. So it was my dream that we set up a large steel plant where we are not going to be importing any raw material, and from this Swadeshi high ash coal, poor quality coal, we are going to wash it, beneficiate it, we are going to gasify it and use that synthesis gas for making steel, for making DRI and then convert it to steel. But with the cancellation of all the coal blocks, all the coal mines, and not only that,
there was a setback on those plans.
There was a big setback, and not only did our fuel source get cancelled, but we had to pay 3,500 crores on top of that. And then the steel markets turned really bad, and then all this dumping was happening. But now, 3 years later, so 3 years, it has been more than 3 years since all this happened. So we have been able to commission in Angul. We have commissioned India's largest and most modern blast furnace based on imported coking coal. So we are importing. So my Swadeshi dream right now has gone for a 6, but we are very hopeful that we are getting a lot of support from the government, from Niti Aayog, from Steel Ministry, that they want to encourage coal gasification. So using this synthesis gas from coal gasification plant, we will use this gas for making DRI and steel. So we are getting encouraging response from them. So I hope if we are able to get coal linkage for this, and in the future if government comes out with coal block auctions for coal gasification, then I'm sure that we'll be able to salvage this project. But now we are not dependent on this.
I understand.
Yeah.
So you basically hedged your risk by importing coal and, by moving out of the Swadeshi dream that you once had. But on an operating level, you've turned in the black after 13 quarters, and I'm sure that must be a relief. A lot of people believe that's happened on the back of steel prices that have rebounded. So I have a very specific question. Do you expect this tailwind, do you expect this steel price rebound to continue, and what's your outlook on prices really?
Okay, I do feel that obviously we are having showing, and not only us but all the steel companies are showing good results because steel demand is high and prices have improved internationally. In fact, in India prices are lower than I would say even international prices, and we expect this to continue because below this level, it's not even viable for anyone to set up a steel plant. So no new steel capacities are coming up. So basically even now worldwide, if you see, steel plant capacities are only like probably 70-75% utilized. There is a huge capacity which is idling, and it's idling because it would not be remunerative to operate them. But now even if the prices were to go down, we are now ready. We are amongst the most efficient steel producers in the world. So now the technology that we have adopted in Angul or Raigarh is mostly based on blast furnaces. Blast furnaces and then oxygen steel making, which is the most efficient way of steel making. And also our products, we are making 60% is long products, 40% flats, and most of the long products, we are making world's longest rails.
That's right.
You cannot import long rails into the country. You cannot export also.
In fact, I think you're the only private manufacturer
right.
of rail in India.
That's right. JSPL is the only company in the private sector which is making railroad rails, and we are very proud of the fact that we have been supplying 260-meter long rails for the dedicated freight corridor. So with these products, we are very confident that now going forward, and also these challenges in the last 3 years that we have faced, it has taught us a lot. We have now learned to operate.
It has made you men of steel in many ways. But the larger question does remain about pricing, and you alluded to the global factors. And it's only fair that I ask you this question because there seems to be this global trade war that Donald Trump has unleashed, targeting China. China is responding with equal measure. Is the India impact being underreported, underassessed, underestimated? Or
actually, we have not felt any impact at all.
But do you expect?
No, we don't,
forward?
because we were not exporting any steel to US, right? We are not. We have never really been exporting steel to the US, so we are not impacted in that sense. Secondly, if some other country starts to dump steel in India, in the past, government of India has taken effective measures to stop that. So Indian steel industry is very important for Indian economy. So many millions of people are employed in this, and it is, even if you see the total GDP, I think more than 2 or 3% GDP is just based on steel or steel related industries. So it's a very important part of our economy. So I am confident the government would support it if any country tries to dump steel into India.
I also want to talk to you about the deleveraging plan that you had at the group level. 4,000 to 5,000 crore rupee was the target to deleverage this year. At least that's what your CEO seems to be telling us at ET Now. How is this going to be done? Is this all going to be asset sale? Is this also going to entail some promoter diluting stake? I want to understand that. And I think a question that the markets want to ask is that the Tamnar plant had plans to sell to JSW Energy. Is there still need to do so? Are you still going to do it, or is that perhaps under review now?
Okay, firstly, we have already, our debt at its highest level used to be 46 something crores.
Yes, yeah.
Now it is already down by almost 10% to 42,000 crores. So we are very proud of that fact that we have completed our Angul project with the investment of
and
more than.
And your debt, you believe, has peaked?
It has already peaked, and in the future, I mean, the banks could try hard, but we are not going to be borrowing. Okay, because we've learned our lessons. And what Shakespeare said, that neither a borrower nor a lender be. So we are going to really follow that we are not going to be borrowing, because borrowing comes at a huge cost. Because when things go wrong, they go wrong from all sides. So from our internal accruals, we have been lowering our debt. So in fact, this year also we have plans we expect very good EBITDA, and we hope to pay our debt by another 5,000 to 6,000 crores in this fiscal also.
Okay.
So then that would be a very comfortable situation for GSPL. Even today we are able to service our debt very well. So we have good EBITDA, we are able to service the debt. Going forward, we will reduce it. And as far as the power plant, the sale of 1,000 megawatt to JSW Energy, that is still on. We are going to ask for extension of time, because there's certain conditions precedent that we were supposed to fulfill, which we have not been able to do so. And there have not been any PPAs coming up. There's a severe crisis of coal. Coal for power plants, there's good demand for power, but coal is not available. So I hope that with the steps that Coal Ministry is taking, Coal India is taking, that they are able to ramp up the production of coal, which is really need of the hour.
So Mr. Jindal, how much more time have you sought on this sale, and is there a chance that you may review the decision altogether, because you seem to be out of the woods right now?
Sure, we may review it, and now it's not really important. So all our planning, if I'm saying that we are going to be paying our debt by 5,000 to 6,000 crores even this fiscal, we have not taken into account that with this power plant sale is going to be possible. No, just from our own internal accruals we will be able to do that. So if the sale happens on our terms, we will do it. If it does not happen, it's not a big deal now. JSPL and JPL are both very strong companies. They'll be able to go on.
I think the other thing that the markets are very keenly awaiting, and I think the stock rallied almost 13% the day of the news, was your Oman business listing.
Right.
Is that on track? By when do we see that happen? And what is the primary reason for you to list that business? Is it also targeted at deleveraging?
So basically, it's about monetizing. Oman business is doing very well. We've shown very good results. Production has increased. We produced 1.7 million tons of steel in the last fiscal, and this fiscal we will cross definitely 2 million tons. We are commissioning a second caster, which would be commissioned by July. So from August, we will be at a run rate of more than 2 lakh tons per month in Oman. So there is a lot of investor interest in Oman. So at some point we are looking at divesting a part of equity of Oman. So whether that is through an IPO, whether that is through a strategic investor, we have to look at that. And other than that, we are also, a lot of banks also, they keep on suggesting us different things, for restructuring the different businesses.
True.
Maybe taking the power out as a separate company, steel in a separate company, international businesses. But there are all these options we are always looking at. So we'll take all the approvals for these things, all the approval from our banks and all the stakeholders, and accordingly then carry on.
But is there a particular size of the fund that you have in mind that you were looking to raise from your Oman business?
So since the valuations are going to be very high, very good, so if we get the right valuation, only then we will do it. So we're not in a rush, or we're not in any kind of hurry.
Right.
So when we get the right valuation, we will do it.
I think you mentioned an important point early on about NCLT, and a related question to that has to be that Indian steel is seeing a tectonic shift of sorts. You have the largest steel maker in the world, Ellen Mittal, wanted to come in. You have Anil Agarwal via Electrosteel, now a bid for SR Steel. You've got Tata Steel struggling very high and making every effort possible to acquire that #1 position. And you of course also have your brother through Moritz Path. It's a big shake-up that the steel industry is witnessing. It's big deep pockets that are coming in, it's big experience that's coming in. How does that change things for the industry and for a company like yours?
So see, with all this consolidation happening, and people paying high prices, earlier what was expected, that the kind of bids that people were expecting for Bhushan or Electrosteel or SR, we never expected there's going to be so much of interest in them, right?
Yes, yes.
So people, these are all very intelligent people, so they do see India as a huge market, as a huge opportunity. After all, our per capita steel consumption is amongst the lowest in the world, and there is a lot of infrastructure that we need to build, a lot of housing that we need to build. So in the coming years, there is going to be huge demand for steel. Steel Ministry has plans to increase production from presently, say, around 100 million ton level to 300 million tons level by 2030. So there's going to be huge expansion in steel, because we can't be building our infrastructure on
Without
imported
steel.
steel.
That's true.
So
Yes.
steel is a basic industry, and in manufacturing you have to have your own steel manufacturing, and India has the raw material, especially iron ore. Plenty of iron ore is there for our own steel production. So that's why all these international companies, you mentioned ArcelorMittal, and even Indian companies, they see as a huge potential, as a huge income generation in steel. So that's why they are very keenly trying to acquire these projects.
What's your take on how this whole IBC and NCLT has panned out? When it began, people thought, oh my God, there's going to be significant asset value erosion, but that hasn't really happened. And you yourself said good high bids have come in. Some haircuts have been taken on, fewer companies like Alok Industries and all of that. But other than that, there's been significant asset value preservation that has happened. What's your assessment?
I think only in a few companies, only in few steel companies, that there has been less asset erosion or less value erosion. Otherwise, most companies, because most companies which may be in hundreds or even thousands in the coming years,
True.
nobody even talks about them. But there's, if you see, somewhere the banks are recovering 5%, somewhere they're recovering 10% or 20%. These are only few successful cases. When we talk about Bhushan or other companies or SR, there's so much of interest. Other most companies, there is no interest. So I feel the way the kind of challenges these companies faced. If companies in Odisha, they were promised that they'll be given iron ore mines. You come and invest in Odisha, will be given iron ore mines. They were not given. All these steel companies, most of them had coal blocks allocated to them. All those coal blocks, fuel source was cancelled. They were not given any kind of compensation. So they were really in a very challenging situation, most of these companies. We are really JSPL, we've really been lucky that by God's grace, we've been able to, make it out of these challenging situations.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just feel that we should have been a little bit more patient with them and help them get out of these, because many of these companies are not really because of anything wrong that they have done.
So Mr. Jindal, are you here suggesting, and do you also believe that at one level the whole IBC amendment and the way it's being carried out does not differentiate between failure and fraud?
That's true. I think it doesn't, just to say that the promoter cannot bid for your own assets. I feel, that's my personal feeling, that I feel it's not fair, because anybody who sets up a plant, they put their heart and soul into it. They put everything that they have into setting up of these large national assets, and then just because they have failed to repay the banks on time, and not because of their own fault. If there's a fraud, I have no sympathy for somebody committing a fraud. But in a very difficult situation, when coal blocks have been cancelled, iron ore blocks have not been given, is it easy to set up plants in India? Why couldn't POSCO set up a plant in India? Why couldn't ArcelorMittal set up a plant in India? It's not easy to set up a plant in India. For people who have actually set up the plants and then to lose it all, I feel very, I feel it's unfair treatment to them.
You're here admitting that the risk-taking appetite of the industry has been dented.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Earlier, when we set up the 1000 megawatt, the most successful, I'm repeating this point, the most successful power project of the country, which led to at least 70,000-80,000 megawatt more. When I went to a banker, I don't want to name the bank, India is one of the biggest banks, I did not want to set up 1000 megawatt. They encouraged me. They said, Mr. Jindal, why don't you set up something big? I was like, big? I had just gone to a banker to ask for 150 crores loan for setting up a rolling mill. They said, why don't you do something big? I said, sir, we have a large power project, 1000 megawatt power project. We could do that. He said, yeah, do it. I said, who will finance it? They said, we will finance it. Can you imagine? And then
so
that
you took
project.
A risk and,
but I took this risk encouraged by the banks. This project came into Prime Minister office monitoring in sometime 2002, 2003, and just we got all the clearances, and then we set up this project. If today there is no shortage of power in India, I am proud to say that Jindal Power Limited has an important role to play in it. So the whole thing, you can see it in the positive light also, and you can see it in the negative light also.
Talking about the steel sector and the achievements of the power sector, but if you actually look at what's happening in the power sector, Minister R.K. Singh has been trying to convince the RBI to perhaps exempt the power sector from stringent NPA norms. The RBI has rejected that. He's now trying to look at other things like asset management company for direct fund infusion and all of that. Will that help?
I don't know. I just feel like this NPA, because most of the power projects, they are selling to state utilities, and most of the state utilities do not pay on time. So if a state utility owes a power company and delays the payment, and here if you're not able to make your repayments or interest payments on time by a single day, and you're going to be termed as an NPA, I think it's most unfair. It's like, we falling sick, and we being falling sick, and we have fever, and we do not attend office, and we are declared dead. Companies, it's exactly that. It is exactly that. For a small mistake that I go to hospital, or I'm feeling pain in my leg and I get an injection or a painkiller, I'm declared dead. Then you're no good anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So see, we in an Indian situation, maybe what RBI is trying to do, bring in all this discipline, is good. But it has to be done in a gradual manner,
and also has to be brought on the other side. So the power utilities also.
No, what about the state of affairs of all the states?
Yeah, that's
all
what
the
I'm saying,
states in India, all the you're right, absolutely. All the
then
power
the discipline
utilities
should be brought to the state
for
utilities
everybody
as well.
So if the power utilities do not pay to their suppliers, why aren't they declared as NPAs? Because they are government, they are strong, they are sovereign, right?
True.
The state government. So we can't have different yardsticks for different entities within the country.
Is it tough being a private sector?
It's really tough. It's really tough being a private sector company in the country.
Why?
Why? Because you are discriminated. You are discriminated. You do not have level playing fields. you are completely discriminated. There's one set of rule for public sector units. You get all the support. Their coal blocks do not get cancelled, and there's a completely different yardstick for private sector. There is no equality.
Last questions, and one of them has to be on this big milestone that we achieved as a country, which is power for all. And you're right,
Yeah.
you've been a contributor to that story as well. But is this, should we be celebrating this, or should we be actually being worried about connecting each one to the grid, connecting every household, connecting just 10% of households in a village and public spaces, and then declaring everybody's connected on power is not good enough? And can this happen without putting the politics out? Because I mean, if you look at tariffs have to rise in accordance. That doesn't happen because of political interference and all of that. Can all of this be sorted out by putting the politics aside?
Yes, obviously, you see, we have made a lot of progress in supplying electricity to most people. Obviously, so many millions of households still remain to be electrified, but still there is good progress. But you just imagine, you're talking about tariff. Today, the tariff, say, is around 4 rupees in the exchange, and electricity boards are buying anywhere from 4 rupees to maybe 6-7 rupees. Just imagine, today the situation is that there is surplus power is available and coal is not available. Coal costs earlier used to be 50 paisa for us. 50 paisa per unit used to be the coal cost.
Right.
Today it is more than 2 rupees and coal is just not available. If all these coal mines had developed, coal blocks were developed, they were producing coal,
The cost would be
then
less,
instead of today power selling in the exchange for 4 rupees, it would have been selling at 2 rupees. And no bank loan would have become NPA. All the bank loans would have been okay. All these power companies would have been making money and supplying cheap power. Using this cheap power as a resource, Indians all over the country would have used this power and tremendously contributed to the economy, to the GDP of the country.
On that note, I'm going to ask you a little bit of a tricky question. 1 year away from 2019 general elections, are we going to see you a lot more here or a lot more in Kurukshetra or some such
Let's
place?
see, whatever is destined for me. I just want to make a difference to the society, to the country. I've always believed in making the India of my dreams. So I tried my best as a people's representative, representing people of Kurukshetra, Haryana for 10 years in the parliament. It has not been easy.
True,
Nobody ever in our India's history, as an industrialist, has gone into active politics. I was not a member of Rajya Sabha. I was, contested elections and got elected.
Direct elections, yes.
Right. So I'll see. I mean, I'm like right now, but I think my company needed, because we had set up huge projects. So I have given my undivided attention to all the companies, worked very closely, learned a lot in these last 4 years. So and now company is doing well. So let's see what is there in store for me.
And it also seems read up a lot of Shakespeare as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Jindal, for talking to us.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Supriya.